But anyway, wow, it is just such an immense honor to get to be here and share some really important information that I hope truly is impactful and is an idea worth spreading. Would it surprise you to know that there are over 42 million individuals living in the United States that also have a disability? According to Pew Research Center and the U.S. Census Bureau, there are 42.5 million individuals, non-institutionalized, that are currently living with a disability. That's nearly 13% of the American population. Let that sink in for a moment. 13%. Now, as if that was not surprising enough, it is also estimated that nearly all of the 42.5 million individuals that I just mentioned also have a sibling that does not have a disability, considered neurotypical. There are also some misconceptions that exist about neurotypical siblings as it pertains to their differently abled brothers and sisters that permeate public and private perceptions. Publicly, many believe that as a neurotypical sibling, you are uniquely equipped. You're an expert of sorts about differing abilities as a whole, and they speculate about what life must be like for you. In families, the misconception is that when you are a neurotypical sibling to an individual with a differing ability, you also are fully equipped to one day assume the full-time role of caregiver and advocate for your differently abled sibling, because you'll just know what to do. You'll understand what comes next. The truth is, neurotypical siblings of individuals with different abilities are not experts and are seldom fully equipped to assume a full-time role of primary caregiver and advocate. You see, there's a variety of elements that are necessary for the care of the differently abled, and many siblings are thrust into a position that they were not adequately equipped for because they were supposed to just know. I know these statistics and misconceptions about individuals with differing abilities and their neurotypical siblings because I'm one of them. As he mentioned, my name is Dr. Deshanna Reed, and there's a whole lot of other really interesting things about me, but the most interesting thing is that I am the youngest of 4 girls. One of my older sisters, Adrienne, was diagnosed in the late 1960s with what was then referred to as severe mental retardation. We now more appropriately refer to it as autism spectrum disorder. At the time of her diagnosis, my parents, Arthur and Dolores Hicks, were a very young married couple living on the combined meager salaries of an Air Force serviceman and a hospital custodian. My oldest sister, Aquanetta, was just 16 months older, and my sister Antoinette was on the way. I came way later into the story. But that's beside the point. Going back to my parents, at the time, doctors told them that Adrienne would largely exist in a vegetative state, more and more so persistent as she aged, and that she would not be able to do even the most basic of tasks. She would need around-the-clock care. It would never be able to do educational things such as reading or writing or even basic arithmetic reasoning. My parents were devastated. They were completely confused, and they had no frame of reference on how to raise a differently abled child while also raising children who were not. One thing that was absolutely unacceptable to them was to buy into public perceptions about individuals with differing abilities in their families. It was also completely unacceptable for them to assume that we would one day just know. So, they mustered the courage and leaned into the unknown and brought us girls into the fold over the years. It was extremely important for them to have us know what they knew. And so they had open, honest conversations with us about 3 essential aspects of caregiving and advocacy that we would one day need to serve in our respective roles. One was legal guardianship. With legal guardianship, they decided that it was best for them to obtain full guardianship over Adrian, considering it would be very difficult for her to make full, important decisions on her own. That meant that they were able to make decisions for her beyond the age of legal adulthood and advise what would be best for her care later on. It also allowed them to help us understand what our role would one day be, considering we would very well assume that role too. Regulations vary by state, and there are lots more options now than, of course, there were in the 1960s. And so it's important for parents to research these options early and often and bring your neurotypical children into the fold. The second important thing was financial management. You see, this was of particular importance to my parents because they knew that this was one of the top ways that individuals with differing abilities were taken advantage of. So my parents decided early on to apply for Social Security income, or SSI, because they knew Adrian would most likely not be able to work independently and earn her own income, a sustainable wage even. They established a bank account on her behalf where her monthly deposits went in, and in later years, my father and I would openly discuss special needs trusts, which are special accounts that a trained financial advisor can establish for families and also can provide guidance to neurotypical siblings who will one day become the caregiver and possibly trustee. The third and most important thing to my parents was community involvement. You see, back then, they felt largely isolated from many families because of the uniqueness of our family. As we aged, my sisters and I, we were normal teenagers, wanted to do normal things and typical hangouts with our friends, but we also knew that our responsibilities to our families were anything but normal. Nonetheless, our parents encouraged us to get involved in extracurricular activities. I was a dancer. One of my sisters went on to become part of beauty pageants, and the other went on to do JROTC, which actually paid off really well in the end. My parents established a community of their own, connecting with other families with differently abled children, providing them with education and resources and referrals and all of the things that they had acquired through the School of Hard Knocks. Today, there are millions of opportunities available for families of individuals with differing abilities that provide support, education, and much-needed respite. Additionally, they empower siblings like my sisters and I to lead fulfilling lives as caregivers and advocates. Despite the grim diagnosis of my sister's past, she did go on to learn to read. Adrian actually enjoys reading some very basic texts. She can do all of her arithmetic reasoning that she so chooses, and she now lives in a group living facility for other individuals with differing abilities where she leads a significantly more active life than I do. She does enjoy spending time with my sisters and I, especially if Dairy Queen or Whataburger are involved. In the years since my parents' passing, my sisters and I have, in our own unique ways, dedicated our personal and professional lives to furthering their mission of advocacy, education, and support for families like ours, and maybe like some of yours. To those of you who are in the audience that has someone in your family who is differently abled and also has children that are not, I urge you to have open and honest conversations with them early and often about those three essentials I mentioned: legal guardianship, financial management, and community involvement. Doing so will provide them with the best chance at an absolutely beautiful future and equip them for lives beyond what you could possibly imagine.